And tar. And now let's go back into history a little bit.
Hello, sir.
Hi. Okay, so this is being recorded, so we can. I'll send you the link to it after we're done. So
Okay.
I just wanted to talk about your paper, and so this is, I think, your paper here, and I think you can see that. And okay, so let me start this. So you write here. Let me see. Remind myself what I wrote. Okay. All right. So Donald Trump's rise, I guess, rise to power, sorry, was something that was growing, a growing theme ever since the turn of the century. Donald Trump has become the voice of the people who were left behind by the rapidly growing globalization. Do you think it only started 21 years ago at the turn of the century?
I'm not sure it's mine.
Uh-oh. Okay, that's not. I'm trying to find. Is this your paper? No. I guess I don't know if you have your paper here. So is it? Gosh, no. Can you? Do you have the paper before you that I sent back? Can you send it to me?
Yes.
Mm-hmm. And because I'm trying, I can't. If that's not your paper, I don't know which one is. So I'm trying to look for it. I don't see it here. Can you have the paper that I sent back?
You didn't send anything to me, I think.
Okay, did I? Let me see if I got your paper. Let me see, what did I? So this was your midterm submission, and this is your. And this is what I have uploaded. So let me open this up here, and this is what I have. You sure this is not your paper, huh?
No.
Did I get your paper?
I hope so.
I don't see it. I mean, if it wasn't there, well, let me see this one. And did you get my comments back on it?
I don't think I checked because I didn't know you would comment.
I'm just looking at this now. I don't know if I. Okay, this doesn't look familiar. I don't know what happened. Let me go through it now. So.
I'm still seeing the other one, I think.
Yeah, let me see. So let me see. So this is go to that, go to here. This is your paper here.
Yes.
Okay. I don't remember seeing this.
Oh.
So I don't know how I missed it. Maybe I I'm just looking to see if I remember this. Okay, my first, I'm looking at the citations here, and I don't see the use and citation of information from the textbook.
Oh, you said we didn't have to mention them.
Well, yeah, on the first draft, sure, okay, but on the next draft, make sure that you use and cite information from.
Okay, I didn't know. Okay.
Yeah. So on the next draft, final draft, if you use and cite information from at least three chapters from chapters 1 through 6 of the textbook, okay?
Mhm.
So you write, the United States of America have deployed military force in multiple countries in support of their allies. They have been using power politics to successfully achieve their agenda, and then multiple wars such as the First World War and dictatorships. Furthermore, the United States, that democracies don't go to war with each other, has successfully been shared around the world. These achievements developed America's patriotism. After the Cold War, globalization and leisure travel began with the States in the foreground. As a result, many Americans felt threatened by the loss. I would say felt threatened by the loss of national identity as white, Euro-white is not a majority culture. So you put this in quotation marks. Where is that from? Did you get that from somewhere?
I don't remember where, but I think it would be from the book.
Okay. Oh, if it's from the book, make sure you cite the page number. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
And it's not majoritarian anymore. Well, I mean,
Or maybe it was from the source.
Yeah. Well, make sure and you have to be careful whenever you make a claim, because it's still the case that white culture still, I mean, majority of the population is still European, but a background, heritage, or view themselves that way. But it's changing. It is becoming more diverse, and in certain places like California or New Mexico or other states, you see that the majority population is no longer European heritage. So, but I do get your point. They experience a loss of trust in institution of the government and elected officials who are supposedly more willing to help refugees than them natives. Okay, so again, it's good that you did research. Again, if you don't use inside information from at least 3 different chapters of the textbook, the highest grade possible will be C. So you really want to make sure you do that. Okay.
Yeah.
So in addition to the above, the 9/11 tragedy deeply marked America's mind in the view of Islamists as proof they backed up and gave rise to the attack in Iraq. A bystander in this matter. Afterwards, President Obama entered the White House during that financial crisis, but he could not change America's role in the world despite the expectations. Good point. You did some. It looks like you did some research, but I want people to make sure that we all also using the textbook. So I see some interesting sources there. Like he's a well-known political scientist. That's good. Okay, but make sure you use information. So okay, afterwards, President Obama entered the White House during the financial. He underestimated the resilience of authoritarian regimes, which resulted in a catastrophic intervention in Syria and Yemen. As a result, America was negatively. Thus, both Donald Trump and Mercy campaign again and protectionism. Yeah, that's true. Good point. Donald Trump had a clear opinion on various topics such as Islamic states and bombing the fuck out of them, while Hillary Clinton planned on keeping Obama's policies. Yeah, he made also a bold statement about NATO that no other. Okay. So, well, how do you explain? I mean, the only reference I see here. Okay, so why? First off, I see a reference to somehow increasing diversity of American society as being a factor that caused the United States to become more insecure and therefore more receptive to white nationalism as expressed by Trump. And then you mentioned this, not paying enough attention to their needs. Of course, somebody like Stephen Hook in the textbook would make the point that the United States structured the institutions of the post Second World War capitalist world in ways which, of course, benefited and reflected in American power and benefited the maintenance of American power. I mean, for example, the fact that this class that you're attending right now is in English with an American professor at an American-style university. This is all a reflection of the world that the Americans built, the kind of regimes the Americans created after World War II. Why would Americans not understand the benefits that the United States has gotten from constructing a world which reflected American power and American aims right after the Second World War? I mean, why don't the American? Do you really think the Americans, as a whole, do not see or understand that English language is so dominant around the world because of the United States, that American technology, American social media, Facebook, Google, American companies like Microsoft, you think that the Americans do not, they've paid more of a price than gained benefits from that kind of a world? Or what do you think is the real source of American discontent with its relationship to the rest of the world that led to the rise of Donald Trump?
Yeah, like I think that indeed they see that the influence the United States has on the world, but also nowadays that diversity is becoming more important to people, so they feel like the white culture is becoming less important, and they don't have the same benefits as before.
And you think that's because many people are benefiting from globalization, like for example me, right? I have my job because of globalization. Here I am, an American teaching Korea, but you think there's a lot of Americans who see themselves as being left behind, who see themselves as being disrespected by increasing diversity that they do not benefit from, or they do not see themselves as identifying with. That basically that why do you think America allowed this? Why do you think the American government allowed this diversification to happen? I mean, why did the American government promote this if it was going to lead to such drastic consequences?
That's a good question.
Well, I mean, I think, like I talked about with other students, I think it has to do with the fact, of course, that the Cold War was a Cold War because because both sides had nuclear weapons, right? So, when we saw conflicts that intense between really powerful states in history, that they would go to war. They would resolve the issue through battle. But of course, if you do that now, everybody dies. So they fight their battles indirectly by competing for influence around the world, competing for influence by including soft power, and by attracting attention, by appearing to represent the aspirations and hopes of the developing world, of parts of the world that want to be prosperous, that want to be modern. And the United States, after the Second World War, was competing with the Soviet Union, which was offering another model for development of countries that were poor and wanted to be modern, that wanted to be developed and developed rapidly. And the Soviet Union, they could point to themselves, right? The Russian Empire was always considered a backward part of, if it was considered part of Europe, was always considered a backward part of Europe. They've always had this inferiority complex of evaluating Russia in relationship to the rest of Europe. And then, of course, they entered the disaster of World War I. They were beaten in World War I. They surrendered in World War I. And fortunately for them, Germany was then defeated by the West. And so they lost. And so Germany had to give up all the land that it conquered from the Russian territory. And then the Civil War broke out. After millions died in World War I, the Civil War broke out. Another million, we don't really know how many millions of people died. Nobody really knows, but millions died. And then as the royal forces, the royalist, aristocratic, conservative forces fought the revolutionary forces that wanted to radically change Russia immediately, and saw their opposition as evil traitors to the aspirations. And you do with traitors kill each other. The traitors should be killed, right? In the view of somebody who sees another person as a traitor. And then, by 1920, the Russian economy was, I think one source I said that it's 12% the size of the economy in 1914. So in that 6-year period, the Russian economy was 12% what it was in 1914 after all the death and destruction and violence. and this was primarily still a rural farming peasant society by 1920. And so the Bolsheviks, the communists, take power, and they finally win the Civil War, and then they begin industrialization. And there's some cruelty happened under Stalin, but of course, when you want to, like they would say, if you want to chop wood, chips must fly, or if you want to make an omelet, you're going to have to break some eggs. So, but by 1939, 1940, by the start of World War II, the Soviet Union, now what it was called the Soviet Union, was now an industrializing state, if not industrialized. And then it was attacked by the Germans, and they suffered horribly. But then they defeated the Germans, and they occupied half of Europe. 27 million Soviet citizens died from the war, but they recovered economically in 5 years. By 1950, they had rebuilt, and then by the late 1950s, they put a satellite in space. The first country put a satellite in space. They had a nuclear bomb by 1949 that they developed on their own. They put a satellite in space. They put the first country to put a human being into space, and they're offering this model to the newly independent countries of Africa and Asia, to the developing countries of Latin America, and saying, you can adopt our model, or look at the American model with its inherent racism, its abuse of Black people, Indian people, Hispanic people, and so the Americans responded, right? The Americans had to respond, and there's been a lot of research done to show that much of the domestic changes that happened in the United States were part of this need to counter Soviet propaganda, because the Soviet Union is saying, the Americans call the Soviet system cruel. Look what they have been doing for 400 years in America to their Blacks and Africans and Hispanics and Indian peoples. And look what they're still doing today. And so a lot of the appeals of the United States, which was a country which, as the Hook textbook highlights in the first chapter, the Hook textbook highlights that the Americans, for most of their history, they have not viewed themselves as a key active player in global politics until they got involved in, the First World War, but that was only at the end. It came in the last year, and then war was over, and then they left, pretty much. And then in World War II, they got involved, and then they began to, they stayed, but then it was really the Cold War, the belief that the dominant view in the United States became, oh my God, the Soviet Union wants to try to do what Nazi Germany attempted to do. That the Soviet Union basically is a Russian version of Nazi Germany, but with a much more appealing ideology. Socialism, not white, not Nazi fascist racism, socialism, and offering a model to the whole world, and pointing to how capitalism and democracy gave us Adolf Hitler and fascism. And so the Americans had, without much history of involvement beyond the elite peoples in America, they had to open up their society, decide to open up their society and provide a leadership role under the American government to world affairs. And they convinced Americans that the communists really were evil, that the Soviet Union really was evil. And so the Americans grumbled about fighting the Korean War. They didn't like it, and it did undermine the Truman administration. I mean, Harry S. Truman, he could have run for re-election in 1952, but he decided he couldn't win because the Americans were so unhappy about the Korean War, and so and then they entered in the Vietnam War, and even though there was suspicion that this isn't a good idea, still the American leadership fought that war. But they had convinced the United States people that there was a serious Soviet communist threat that stood against everything that Americans loved, including God, versus atheistic communism, and socialism versus free market capitalism. That the Soviet Union was not just an adversary; it was an evil empire, as Ronald Reagan called it in a speech in 1983. It's like, evil, not just an adversary. It's the incarnation of evil. And they would tolerate this. Not everybody, I mean, the Vietnam War showed that there was a mistake in that assumption about how the world functions in terms of the forces of good versus the forces of evil. That's a very simplistic notion, and the Americans didn't understand Vietnamese nationalism, Cuban nationalism, the nationalisms that were emerging around the world that didn't want to be under Moscow and they didn't want to be under Washington. They wanted to be, they wanted to be sovereign. Vietnamese nationalism, Iranian nationalism. They didn't understand these things because they were blinded by this good versus evil framework, and that they had brainwashed themselves into believing. And of course, at the same time, they're trying to attract support from and gain support and sympathy from other actors around the world. And so they, changed their laws. They carried out domestic reforms, including civil rights legislation to make sure that Black people were actually able to participate, to vote, to not be discriminated against. And they also changed their immigration laws. Like American immigration laws used to be quite easy to get into the United States for most of its history until the 1920s. And then racism emerged again, and America passed laws to prevent immigration from non-Protestant, from countries other than Northern Europe. And then the Americans changed those laws in the 1960s. And as a result, there was lots of immigration in the United States from Africa and Asia. And this, was all part of this effort to try to appeal to the world, that American model is the model, not the Soviet Union, not the communist model. And that it was tolerated until the end of the Cold War, and then in 1989, the Berlin Wall came down, the communist regimes in Eastern Europe collapsed, then the Soviet Union itself collapsed, and the Americans convinced themselves that they had won that war. The American elite, that foreign policy establishment, that blob that we talked about in class, the blob, it convinced itself that it won that war. And the blob people tend to talk to other blob people, right? And meanwhile, there was this surrounding American society of people that, as Hook describes in the book, and again, make sure you use inside information from 3 different chapters, from chapters 1 through 6. There's this surrounding American society that Hook's described that the majority of people don't pay attention to foreign affairs very closely. Yeah, they'll believe good versus evil, communism versus God. They'll believe that. But in terms of understanding the details of these things, they don't really go in. They don't pay close attention. And then the Soviet Union's gone, and the blob people are saying, "Yay, we won! Where are we? Woo! Yeah, high five! But the rest of the American people are not so excited about building the new world order that George H.W. Bush talks about in 1990, when Soviet Union is beginning to disintegrate, and then Saddam Hussein, who had been America's ally against Iran in a war that he started, Saddam Hussein started in 1980. By 1989, 1990, decided that, well, now that he's going to begin to make himself the Otto von Bismarck of the Arabs. He's going to unify the Arabs under his dictatorship, finally, and wipe away those boundaries that the British and the French drew in the Middle East after World War I. And so he invades Kuwait, and George H.W. Bush goes to war, declares with Margaret Thatcher and others that Saddam Hussein's a Hitler and we need to fight the dictator. And the Americans went, okay, let's go fight the dictator. And they destroy the Iraq. They lose less than 100 soldiers. And then George H.W. Bush is this tremendously popular, according to public opinion surveys, he's tremendously popular. Over 90% public opinion approval ratings. And this is in the spring of 1991, summer 1991. And then in November 1992, he loses the election to Bill Clinton because the economy is kind of weak. The Americans were, okay, we'll rally around the flag, war's over. We're spending why are we involved in this war? Why is the economy? And so they voted for Bill Clinton and defeated, even though just 16 months earlier, George H.W. Bush looked like he was invincible. And this was the first shock to the blob. That there was some American discontent, but at the same time, most Americans they don't have a plan. They don't have a strategy. They have, and most politicians as well, they have a reaction to events. There had been lots of money invested in the military, in the economy to support the military. So there really wasn't much change under Bill Clinton. Bill Clinton didn't really attack the military, the foreign policy establishment, the military. He engaged in little military operations, like against Kosovo, against Serbia, in Operation Allied Force in 1999. But he was very careful not to have American soldiers fight on the ground. They just dropped bombs from high and near, so they couldn't be shot down. And that's all they did. They dropped bombs and they let the Albanian Kosovo Liberation Army basically be the infantry to fight them on the ground. And the Americans went, yay, we like Bill Clinton. And then, of course, they had an election in 2000, and Bill Clinton's Vice President Al Gore lost to George W. Bush, the son of George H.W. Bush, by 500,000 votes. And so George W. Bush becomes president and doesn't really challenge or change American foreign policy very much until the 9/11 attacks happen. And then he decides and responds to rally this American nationalism to remake the Middle East. So they invade Iraq. They decided first they're going to go after Iraq, but they can't go after Iraq before they go after Afghanistan. So they invade Afghanistan and then they invade Iraq. And again, the American people rally, and then but again, meanwhile, there's not really this increasing diversification of America is underway, and there's not this radical change going on in the United States until Donald Trump begins to exploit this after Barack Obama gets elected president. Now, for a lot of Americans, that was the shocker. How could we, for a lot of people like Barack Obama, a lot of people said, how can this son of an African student become president of my country? Like Barack Obama's father was a prince from Kenya, a tribal prince from Kenya, who studied in graduate school at some university in the United States and met his mom, a white student at Kansas, at the University of Kansas. And a lot of people thought that was great. Like, you might think that's great. I might think that's great. We love globalization, but a lot of people, particularly when they were suspecting his name is Barack Hussein Obama. Barack Hussein Obama, President Barack Hussein Obama. And then Hillary Clinton runs for president, and she's not a good campaigner. Again, there's this increasing diversification between those people that want to be globalized, cosmopolitan, pro-human rights focused actors, that what Steve Bannon and the Trump people call the globalists, versus that core group that supports Trump, that finds all of this change, feminism, human rights expansion, globalization as threatening, and basically challenging their identity, who they are as traditional Americans. Or traditional Americans wannabes, like Hispanic, Catholic Hispanics who were conservative and want to be integrated and assimilated, like the way my father was assimilated from Southern Italy, went to the United States and became, I'm white, even though 120 years ago, Italians were not considered white in America. And so Trump exploited that and succeeded in mobilizing that anger towards the Democratic party establishment that seemed to be globalistic in orientation, particularly, but they're also in the Republican Party. But he knocked out those globalists in the Republican Party in the primaries, in the Republican primary elections, and he defeated George W. Bush's brother, Jeb Bush, who was governor of Florida. All these people that the blob, the establishment thought Donald Trump's not going to win. He can't win. He's just a clown. He's just doing this for media. This is like a big self-promotion campaign for his business. He's not going to, oh my God, he won. He won the primary, and then he beat Hillary Clinton. Even though Hillary Clinton was smarter, more articulate, and he won because of the features of the American system. Hillary Clinton still got like 3 million votes more than he did. at least, I think, almost 4 million votes more than he did. But he won enough of the Electoral College votes. And so I guess my final questions to you is, what do you think will be the impact of the humiliation in Afghanistan with the American allies government there just collapsing almost immediately, and the Americans fleeing Afghanistan, Afghans trying to hold onto the plane to try to escape and falling off the plane, as you saw on television, in the news media? Do you think Americans will say, yay, we're no longer overextended, yay, we're withdrawing, we're no longer in Afghanistan, hooray? You think that's what Americans will do and reward Joe Biden for that politically?
No, I think like quite the opposite. They will feel like humiliated and want to do more to make sure that their influence in the world has not diminished.
You think? I mean, we talk about different groups of Americans, right? I mean, yeah, I think you're right, though. Those same people that don't like the globalization, the extension of the United States, also don't like their country appearing to be incompetent. And of course, Biden's adversaries, political adversaries, including Trump, who's probably going to run again for president, are portraying him as incompetent. That he's like a version of Jimmy Carter from the 1970s, who was president when the United States was humiliated with the Iran hostage crisis, with the collapse of America's CIA client, the Shah of Iran. This is not long after the defeat in Vietnam. The economic inflation happening in the 1970s under Jimmy Carter. There's all these dangers repeating themselves now with Joe Biden because of forces not under Joe Biden's control. I mean, of course, Joe Biden claims he inherited that withdrawal agreement from Trump. Trump negotiated that agreement to withdraw and leave Afghanistan originally by May. He made that agreement with the Taliban in early 2020, before the pandemic really got going. And if the pandemic hadn't happened, I think Trump probably would have been reelected. Because again, most Americans don't pay that much attention to politics, foreign affairs, I should say. And the economy was doing well, but then the pandemic happened, and Trump looked himself not particularly competent. So that was what Biden was saying, that he inherited this agreement that Trump made. The Taliban had stopped attacking American forces at that time as part of the agreement, and then they left. So you think that basically that American discontent among particularly white conservative American men and their wives reflects anxiety and insecurity about their identity as Americans, which the Kabul embarrassment is going to potentially be used by Trump's adversaries in the campaign to say, yes, Joe Biden is all part of this humiliation about America that we've got to put a stop to.
I think so.
Yeah. I mean, one of the reasons why I like having these meetings with people is because it gives me an opportunity to talk through my own ideas and think through them. Yeah. So I think things are going to become even more interesting. So let me just put down here, just to make sure that I put this down. Please make sure that you use and cite specific information, at least 3 different chapters on the Hook textbook, books chapters 1 through 6, to support, develop, and refine your points. Okay. Yeah, I mean, I'm impressed by the research you did, but I mean, I do have to ask the students to actually study the textbook as well. So
No, I did use the textbook, but just
good.
because I thought we didn't know how to cite them. So
well, okay. I mean, just put the hook page, put the hook and page number. Just put the page number.
okay, yeah, no problem.
Okay, you have any questions?
Do we, on the final draft, is it also 400 words?
Yeah, I mean, up to 550 words, 550
Okay.
words, not including the references and the titles. Okay. And your address, is your address, are you Czech?
No, Switzerland.
Oh, CH is Switzerland?
Yes.
Oh, I didn't know that. Okay. So, all right. So which university are you coming from?
From the one from Geneva. It's
Oh, okay. Yeah. Okay. So, all right. So, okay. All right. If that's it, I recorded the meeting, so I'll send you the link in case you want to look at it again. Okay.
Sure, thank you. And I have a question about the oral debate.
Uh-huh.
Do I have to prepare like 25 minutes speech? And do I have to write anything?
You can make a PowerPoint presentation. You can do everything like we're doing here, like I'm doing with sharing screen. You can share screen with everybody. The format is the pro makes the opening statement for up to 6 minutes. Am I your opponent or do you have another opponent?
I think you're my opponent.
Okay. Are you pro or con?
I'm con.
Okay. So I'll speak first for up to 6 minutes. You'll then speak for up to 6 minutes. Then I will rebut for 4 minutes. And then you rebut and conclude for up to 7 minutes, and then you have then pro has the last word for 3 minutes, and then we let students ask questions, and then. But if you want to make a PowerPoint presentation and share your screen, that's always great. You're learning how to use the Zoom. I don't think we're going to go back. The world's never going to go back to the way it was 2 years ago. There's just too much. I mean, I'm always getting stuff now on the internet about live streamed, Zoom streamed events that are from, I just signed up for something and it's going to be aired from Paris, from some academic institute in Paris on Russia and Afghanistan. So learning how to use the Zoom and all what you can do with the Zoom, is a good idea. And so you can share your screen with PowerPoint, or you might just make a Microsoft Word document, whatever. Yeah, that's it. Okay.
Okay, thanks a lot.
Okay. So I'll see you next week.
Thank you. Have a good day.
Okay, bye.